Cybersecurity will be a foundation for adopting AI across industry. We got to sliver each one of these layers and have frameworks in each one of these models. Monetization is not going to happen at the chip level or at the infra level. When you start delivering the services back to the industry, and that happens at the application layer. And that's where you need to really collaborate, adopt these cybersecurity platform approach, not a point product approach.
Thank you everyone for joining in for USISPF first leadership podcast in the lead up to the AI Impact Summit. Today we have as a guest Vishak Raman from Fortinet. Vishak is the Vice President of Sales for India, SAARC, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand at Fortinet and brings about 25 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry. Vishak has been instrumental in establishing and growing Fortinet's technology leadership success story in India. Previously, Vishak has worked at Cisco, FireEye, Tata Communications, WatchGuard, SIFI, and HCL Technologies. And he has a postgraduate diploma in business management from IIM Ahmedabad. Vishak, a very warm welcome to you to USISPF first leadership podcast.
Hey, thanks. It's quite great to be here and get connected with USIPF as well.
Thank you. So Vishak, the context for this leadership podcast is that India is hosting in mid-February the AI Impact Summit, and we are expected to see a lot of global CEOs and also heads of states from dozens of countries. This is the fourth summit following Bletchley Park, Seoul, and Paris last year. And on the agenda for the Indian government is increasing access to AI products, ensuring there's impact on ground across welfare sectors, and also there's democratization of AI resources. But within all of this, a key aspect is cybersecurity, of which you're a very leading expert. And cybersecurity is important because whatever AI deployment India wants to do within industry and for welfare application, I think being cybersecurity will be forefront of its priorities. And of the many themes India is prioritizing, safe and trusted AI is one. So as the first question, as we approach this summit in New Delhi in February, could you please characterize the current state of India's cybersecurity preparedness in the face of rapid AI adoption across enterprises?
Yeah, and I think, first let's get into the basic model of AI, where does it make relevance? And where does it pivot from an Indian context point of view? The AI model can be broken into multiple layers. Definitely, energy layer is the basic. How do we power AI data centers? Then came the next layer, which is your chip level, and then comes very specifically the infrastructure layer, which is what we kind of play very effectively at Fortinet. And but there are other two layers, which is the AI model itself. And the most important relevant one, which sits on top of the AI model, is the application layer. And how are we actually really looking at cybersecurity across these layers of adoption? And that's important because AI adoption is gaining a lot more prominence when you really look at automation in IT and security operations. People have adopted AI very effectively. And in the manufacturing setup, we've seen how people have moved away from a reactive analysis to a predictive analysis. And in the banking and financial sector, we're talking about AI being effectively used for fraud detection, right? But when you really look at the government services, how does the public utility services are being consumed? AI is being enabled for its cloud adoption and the data platforms as such. So what you see is the AI layer on the left-hand side. But what you see on the right-hand side is where is the use cases which are being, sort of effectively used, right? So cybersecurity forms a very basic trust layer across the AI architecture and across the industry, which is going to actually adopt AI very effectively, right? And the momentum is strong, but cybersecurity preparedness is pretty uneven, I would say. People are approaching cybersecurity at predominantly at the infrastructure layer. But when you really look at the threats, which is actually the AI models expose, is quite high. And then when we move into the application layer services, which is where India's big tech workforce has a hand in it, and its impact is quite high, we really need to go deeper into those application layers of security. And 71% of CIOs have actually said that from a preparedness from AI skills, from an operating model perspective, they're not prepared, right? And cybersecurity is a trust layer for more intelligent-driven transformation. And we've always been very successful in digitizing the process from in India. But what do you actually drive is towards using intelligence from an AI point of view, which gives you a lot more contextual information and securing that application layer a lot more cohesively. And this is where the real value of enterprise and how do we bring in national digital confidence and long-term growth from an AI point of view. So cybersecurity forms a trust layer between the AI's architecture layer, whether it's at the chip level, whether it is at infrastructure level, at the energy level, at the application level, and the AI model level itself. And then comes the use case about whether it's manufacturing, logistics, banking and financial sector. How do you make sure you offer personalized digital services back to customers? And all of these supply and demand needs to be secured with a trust layer. And this is where cybersecurity forms a very, very pivotal part.
Thank you, Vishak. I think that framing and that structure or that lens is very important for the general audience to understand, because for them, I think AI just means a chat GPT online, or just like a data center. So thanks for laying that out. If I may request you to dig a little deeper and let us know what are the most concerning AI-powered cyber threats emerging today, and how are they fundamentally different from traditional cyber threats?
So if you look at it, AI fundamentally shifted this whole volume and velocity, right? Cyber attacks today are running at machine speed, and 72% of a recent IDC survey, 72% of organizations have already encountered AI-powered cyber threat attacks. And out of that, 70% of them are reporting 2x increase of such incidents in the past year, which is in 2025, right? So we're stepping into an era where AI is actually a double-edged sword, where AI is being actually used by cyber criminals in terms of AI-assisted credential surfing, whether it's a brute force attacks or deep fake impersonation, or whether you're talking about business email compromise, or even creating a malware which is actually very environmental aware. That means the malware has the capability to study the environment and look at what is the operating system environment, what is the application environment, and find out vulnerabilities which are not patched, and then start behaving. So AI is actually increase the velocity and the volume of attacks, right? And this is where I think it's AI is actually powered the industrialization of cyber attacks, right? So this is where attacks are now starting with AI automation to launch high volume, low cost attacks. That means you are not actually creating a mass effect, but very targeted. Instead of a loud, big classic malware outbreak, people are really quietly exploiting misconfiguration. They're actually going after privileged access. That means identity is becoming a big attack surface out there, where AI is actually camouflaging somebody's identity per se. And then came this whole collaboration model of application layer integration, which is the APIs, and the trusted relationship between supplier and the entire connected ecosystem. So to me, AI is actually supercharged cybercrime. And this is where we need to really effectively use AI to counter the AI-based attacks in terms of whether automation, whether in terms of getting cyber threat intelligence, or how do you actually cohesively build integrated platforms which match the speed and the volume at which these attacks are actually happening. So if you want to counter AI-based attacks, which is on the rise, you got to have tools, techniques, procedures which are AI powered.
Thanks, Vishak. It's very important to understand and characterize the enemy at hand, and you've done that very well. If we can shift gears and just focus on cloud adoption a little bit, cloud adoption has dramatically accelerated in India over the past few years. So, could you let us know what are the blind spot organizations typically miss when securing multi cloud and hybrid environments?
So if you really look at cloud, I think post-COVID, during the COVID, that's where we really scaled our cloud adoption. But we didn't have cybersecurity as foundation when we adapted this whole massive forklift of cloud workloads, right? And this is where we need to really understand to the basics. Cloud security is a shared model. A cloud provider has a limited set of responsibility, but when you really uncover that shared responsibility and double click, who owns the identity, who owns the access, who owns the configuration, and how the data is getting actually used, this is where cloud responsibility from cybersecurity point of view, it's blurred, right? So this is where organizations are getting exposed more about cloud vulnerabilities, misconfigurations. And if you really look at it, what's the identity which is given in a cloud from an identity access management, whether it's service accounts or the sprawling cloud accounts in a hybrid nature. Cloud is no more just one single vendor, right? We are stepping into an era where the whole cloud computing model is on demand. That means you really need to have your identity fetched on demand for every query, right? And this is where you have this whole shadow SaaS service. And this is where shadow AI usage. Today, most of the organizations have a phenomenal amount of AI usage, and organizations are struggling with to gain the visibility of number of applications. AI applications, what enterprise are actually using it, right? So that gives a huge increases the risk portion, and also the data leakage which can happen from the cloud. That means your cloud jacking is actually happening a lot more effectively. And when it step into the cloud, we are talking about more of east-west traffic. That's where you have fragmented security tools. That means, like, you're sitting a swell chair and then trying to fix from one workload to another workload, and then seeing, can I detect attack faster? Can I investigate? And especially the complexity is actually increased to get what is your cloud security posture? Can you detect attacks faster and respond the way what you used to do it in the on-premise environment? And how do you transform that same level of security architecture and build resilience in the cloud infrastructure? So we are getting to an era where identity, your posture management, threat detection in a hybrid cloud becomes a lot more critical than ever before because we've adopted that environment.
Thanks, Vishak. I think cloud is an example of a very complicated with multi stakeholders within it. And I think it needs a concerted effort to cyber secure it. My next question is about a skilling and talent gap. There's a global talent gap for cybersecurity professionals, and it's prevalent in India and outside as well. So, firstly, can you tell us what are the kind of skills that cybersecurity professionals need to have, especially in this AI age, and how can India specifically go about it?
Yeah. So if you really look at it, there is a skill gap of a shortfall of roughly less than about 5 million jobs in cybersecurity. That means the talent gap will have unfulfilled, jobs in cybersecurity because that is where people are really looking for building business resilience. And when you really combine the blend of security, AI literacy, and then bring in the business context, and this is where AI literacy for security teams is so important. For example, how do you understand when you build an AI model? What are the prompts? What are the agents which are actually being configured, and how the entire data pipeline work, and where does the risk actually emerge? So if you really look at adopting AI is one part of it, but getting security as a foundation across these 5 layers, whether it's at the energy level, you're talking about OT security there. If you're talking about at a chip level, we are talking about how secure is your ASIC chips when they really compute at that scale, how well they're integrated, and you do your wire speed inline detection. And then when you move into the infra layer, that's where securing the AI becomes a very important part, right? So there is a huge skill shortage in across all these layers. And this is where AI can actually help in augmenting the skill gap, what we see, especially on the L1 and L2. And I don't think AI is going to replace humans, whether it is, let's say, a security operation. It's going to enhance and give you the contextual information which you're, you're traditionally you relied on L1 and L2, right? So in fact, AI is going to actually fill the gap what we are going to see as cybersecurity professionals. So to me, AI is going to help in detecting attacks better, remediating them, and AI is going to play a very important role about automation, right? So AI is going to help in bridging the cybersecurity skill gap in terms of detection, remediation, and automation, which is what the whole cybersecurity uh, effectiveness is all about, right? And we need to align more towards training, certification, and more importantly, when we look at Fortinet's 2025 Global Cybersecurity Skill Gap Report, close to about 87% of cybersecurity professional is expected to enhance, adopt AI better, right? And 97% of organizations are already using agentic AI from an enablement of security tools, right? So there's going to be a huge adoption at a product level, at an infrastructure level, and also from an application level. And AI is going to actually help people to bridge this whole gap in cybersecurity from a human firewalls needs perspective.
Thanks, Vishak. It's important for the audience to know that AI is augmenting threat, but at the same time, it can be used fruitfully to upskill the talent and use it to counter cyber threats. Now that you've laid out possibly all high level angles of cybersecurity and AI, I would bring you back to India hosting the AI Impact Summit. And India doesn't do this very frequently. G20 was a summit of the same level. Before that, we had a similar summit called the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. So we have world leaders, heads of state visiting, and global CEOs visiting. So, what would be your recommendation to policymakers and businesses to use this opportunity? Is it building collaboration across industries in different jurisdictions? Is it getting everyone on the same page about certification or standards? So, how can this opportunity be used, and how can the cybersecurity community in India, especially, move forward with this summit?
Yeah, I think this whole AI layer and the industry adoption, cybersecurity is going to help them to adopt AI much faster. So AI is, cybersecurity is going to act as a catalyst from an adoption, right? So how do you build a trust layer within AI? And that's getting into a real economic impact, right? And you got to really move away from this whole reactive towards building a cyber resilience, right? If you really look at it, cyber resilience is not about preventing or detecting attacks. Those are two are very important. But how do you build your cyber resiliency post breach? How do you actually get your backup? How do you get your post breach communication back? Because attacks is on the rise, and cyber criminals are actually using it very effectively to target this whole infrastructure from what we are building from an AI adoption point of view, right? So you really need to drive cyber resilience over reactive cyber preventive measures. Yes, of course, they are important. And also bring in shadow AI into the light. What I mean by that is get your visibility, get your visibility of those applications, get your clear policy, and how do you enhance your continuous monitoring of those shadow AI applications. You can detect threats, what you can have better visibility, right? You first start with bringing in those shadow AI application to the forefront and have tools which will actually give you the visibility. And also look at securing the AI supply chain fully. That means, in the data models, just not about protecting your LLMs. I'm talking about how those API connects are actually being made. How is data poisoning can be prevented? How is your endpoint security is being made from an access back to a customer? So bring in a larger supply chain AI security back into the setup. And if you really look at it, you need to have better speed, better visibility at the compute layer. So you need to strengthen at your infrastructure layer as well. And cybersecurity needs to be core. People are building a large amount of data centers, right? Because you need a large compute layer to feed this large models what we are creating, right? And also really don't forget this whole India-US partnership towards securing public digital infrastructure. How do you build trust from a cross-border point of view, both from a talent development and public-private partnership on threat intelligence? Like, how do you actually collaborate to consume threat intelligence back to this large infrastructure layer what we are building? And I think the big cutting edge for India US partnership is going to be when the Indian organizations goes and builds that application layer from an adoption for AI. How do we frame in cybersecurity and threat intelligence back? Because let's admit, we are in the phase in which we are going to monetize this whole large application layer with our huge skilled workforce what we have, right? And that is where India is going to play a very pivotal role. And you got to really make the trust layer more cybersecurity aware before even adopting them, right? Right now, our focus is at the infrastructure layer, but how do we pivot towards building that service layer, which is where the entire monetization of AI is going to happen. Monetization is not going to happen at the chip level or at the infra level. Yes, you will have, but when you start delivering the services back to the industry, and that happens at that application layer, right? And that's where you need to really collaborate, adopt these, I would say, cybersecurity platform approach, not a point product approach. And how do you consume threat intelligence and scale AI with a lot more confidence than a fear factor which at the back of the mind? So it's, to me, cybersecurity will be a foundation for adopting this AI across industry, and we got to sliver each one of these layers and have frameworks in each one of these models.
Thanks, Vishak. I think especially the US-India angle for a country which is developing and building the AI infrastructure to a country which is adopting it at scale. And impact is the word the summit is using in February, where it wants to show on-ground impact. And India will also be looking to position itself as a leader of the global South. So if with India, global South countries can come together and they can translate that intelligence back to the foundational layers to countries like US and others, I think there will be a good global collaboration. And so now coming to my last question, I think you may have already answered it through the existing questions earlier. But all companies are not Fortinet. Some are just starting out. There are startups, there are young startup founders. So we just wanted to ask you, what is that one mind shift change? And you've spoken about how to be proactive and preventive and not reactive. But what would be your advice to, say, a 20-year-old startup founder or a 25-year-old startup founder who are going all out on business, but they also want to digitally secure their operations? And this can be an anecdote from your personal life or just over your close to 30 years of experience, or more, I'm sorry. But what would you be your advice to those just starting out on their cybersecurity journey?
See, the most important mindset shift is security is not a collection of tools. Security is actually about consuming this platform-based security. That means, you have a point problem, you bought a point product. That is not going to help, right? So we need to really have a continuous security operating system for the business, right? And this is where adopting a platform or a managed services layer from a service provider makes a lot more sense rather than having this tool sprawl, right? And second part, AI-based attacks are constant. That means you got to have defense which has to be continuous, automated, and integrated, and never it has to be siloed. So you need to have a constant approach of defense, because if you really need to drive this, you got to measure what matters, right? Is it like more critical assets what you want to protect? Like for an SME, it's a critical assets, whereas in a large enterprise, it's about securing that large critical infrastructures which they've built over many periods, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on premise. But for an SME, what matters is, and India is a big contributor for these SMEs. In India, we have close to about 63 million plus SMEs, right? And so you need to measure what matters to you most, and you can protect of those crown jewels, not a heap and spray. So get your laser focus towards the critical crown jewels and not get distracted with what you don't need to protect as well, right? And also reduce the fragmentation, right? Because today, if you want to really integrate security across network, cloud, identity, endpoint, you need to adopt a platform-based approach, right? So move from a reactive mindset to, I would say, look at security from a cyber resilience point of view and measure and protect what matters to you. And also use AI effectively to reduce the compressed time. When you say detection, what's the mean time to detect? When you say remediation, how well the system is automated to really self-heal, right? So you really need to pivot from a point product approach to a platform-based approach. And you got to really strengthen your defense mechanism. And you really need to focus towards security operations. And you really need to protect the AI systems as well, right? And most important, the data itself. So it's an approach towards moving away from point products to a platform, moving away from reactive to more predictive intelligence, and effective use of AI is the kind of support what a business owner can actually get this AI adoption at scale.
Thank you, Vishak. Thank you for your answers through the questions. I think you've laid out the priorities for the summit, but also for all organizations, how should they act, operate, and prioritize their operations for cybersecurity. With that, we come to the end of the first USISPF Leadership Podcast series with Vishak Raman. We request our audience to stay tuned for more such episodes in the future. Thank you, Vishak. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Shadakru.